Hello, and welcome to On Point, a podcast by Oak Street Funding, where we bring research and data-backed insights to dig into the minds of industry leaders to learn how to stand out, navigate, and break through this ever-changing industry. I am your host, Bridget Height, and you can support this podcast by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on our website, or wherever you get your podcasts. We will be there hanging out and talking to industry leaders and ready to empower you to grow your business. So now let's get on point. Today, I am delighted to welcome Rob Madore and Adam Farag to the show. Rob is Vice President of Financial Advisory at MarshBerry, and Adam is Vice President of Sales at Oak Street Funding. And today, we're going to go deeper into the topics of our webinar, Uncover M&A Possibilities, Bridge Loans, and Deal Creativity. Rob and Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
I talked to my agent ahead of this, who does all the bookings, and they said you don't have to spend any more than 50 minutes with Adam. And I think we're fast approaching it.
Yes.
So.
Yes. All right, well, let's just dig right in then. So to start, Rob, can you walk us through the new trends that sellers are pursuing given the current market conditions?
Sure. Yeah, kind of like we talked a little bit about on the webinar. M&A has had a serious resurgence. There was actually a week, like the first week of April, I think there's 15 deals done in the first week of April. So anyways, so yeah, it was a pretty big week. So there's obviously a lot of activity. I don't know that there's a lot of changes to like the strategies of sellers. Mm-hmm. What I would say is there are some responses to outside, I'll call them stimuli. That's almost overly scientific. But like when you look back, if you look back at 2021, when there was the last, obviously there's some political stuff going on and there's proposed changes to capital gains tax. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You saw a massive spike in deals across all sectors, industries. And I think the really interesting thing when you look at Q1 being actually pretty high in deal volume and in assets acquired, and you look at kind of like what I was saying with April, which the numbers aren't final yet. So we'll see how that all shakes out in a couple weeks. That's not really even baking in the impact of these proposed tax changes, which are really significant on the cap gain side. And a lot of business owners, the advantage of selling a business that had a low basis is capital gains treatment and some really nice proceeds, not at ordinary income. So we really won't even see that until probably Q3 at the earliest because of the time these deals take. So I don't know that there's a lot of like different strategies that sellers are taking. I'd say it's more they respond to outside stimuli. There's always going to be that push due to succession, naturally for succession, mm-hmm. to try and bridge the gap between external and internal valuations, and then naturally other things that would impact the proceeds that flow back through to the owners that oftentimes founded the business in a sale. Yeah. And so, if those come to fruition, again, I have no crystal ball, nor am I able to actually give tax advice. But, when you look at like a break even, like how long, if these go through, how long would it take to build your business back to where you're actually netting the same amount? Right. It could be 5, 7, 10 years. So,
Adam, are you noticing any trends?
Yeah, I think sellers are educating themselves, right? I think folks are going to firms like Rob's.
That's a good one.
And getting together and saying, hey, we need to understand what types of deal structures are out there, what have been the changes in the past couple of years that Rob just alluded to, and how are they going to affect me, right? So what kind of deal should I go after? Right. Who am I? So I think, all the different types of sales, I think sellers are really starting to zero in and say, hey, I need to figure out which one's best for me and how I best go along that path.
That's a good one. I wish more that weren't selling would start educating themselves on their own business and the options. That would be when we do this again, because there's obviously lots for us to say. When we do this again, I would hope that we can say, hey, this is what has happened since that last Oak Street, podcast.
Yeah. There you go, listeners.
Is just business owners are starting to educate themselves and being more intentional.
Great. Totally. So now, ideally, a business can sell their business for as much as possible. Are there main factors before selling that owners should consider to maximize the value of their firm? And can you provide an example of successful selling strategies?
Yeah, I would say I would say if I was going to try and overly simplify it, it would be make sure your business is growing. That's number one.
Sounds familiar.
Yep. Growth is key. I mean, growth solves a lot of problems. Number two is try and spread both equity and production of new business across more than just one owner. Right. It makes you more valuable. It makes you able to perpetuate the business long term if you so choose to. And then the third is manage your business like a business. Like have a good hold of your financials. Like I'm sure Adam will agree. Like you run into a business. I think maybe we talked about this on the webinar too. You know, if you run into a business and they're able to sit with you on a call pretty quickly after you meet them and say, hey, here's my top line. Here's my bottom line. Here's like the strengths of my business. Here's where I'm planning on investing. A business owner like that is someone that has optionality to sell their business, take on debt. Like they're the people that we would love to work with.
Totally.
You know,
it makes our job
and
easier too.
It's 1 out of 10.
It makes the process easier. It makes our job easier. You know, you get folks that you ask for things and it's all very organized in a nice data room. It's like, okay, there's intentionality here, right? And I think that's kind of the key. And just kind of knowing what you're getting into.
And I'm not saying that's either like, I'm not saying, hey, you got to go and start doing some financial audits with PwC.
Yeah.
My brother works there, by the way. So like, I don't know if that get him in trouble by saying that, but that's not what we're recommending, or not what I'm recommending. I'm just saying, make sure you get a hold of things and you know, you're able to articulate it.
So what type of wealth management strategies are most effective when implemented prior to the transaction before being finalized?
So I think, you know, large changes to the business right before the sale are kind of scary, right? So, I mean, I think being able to stabilize that out, having a proper bridge to what the business looks like pre-close of the sale to post, and being able to clearly articulate and explain that and tell that story, because it usually is a story, right? There are going to be changes, and it's got to be a story. So the better you can articulate that story, the better that you can help Rob articulate that story, the better your 100%. Sale process is going to be.
Well, and it's alignment between the story that you like. There's no hiding when you do an M&A transaction. It's like everything is bared at some point during the process, which can be it's an opening of the kimono. It can be 9 months, and you better believe that you know you're not hiding the skeleton in your closet by the end of that. So it's not just about how the business is marketed and the story that's being told about, you know, why you founded it and how you got your first customers and how you built it. It's the financials aligning with it and the investments you're making aligning with it. That's nirvana.
So Rob, what are the different kinds of sellers you typically see in transactions?
Well, you kind of see, I'd put them in 2 buckets if we're going to bucket them, which would be those that are looking to exit their business, right? You know, oftentimes older owners that don't necessarily have a Gen 2, or it's kind of in between like a book and a business. You know, it doesn't have the scale of a true business practice, but it's not quite as small as like an individual book. So oftentimes those owners will get to a point in their lives and say, well, I think like it's about time for me to just find someone to take these clients over, and if I can make a little bit of money, that'd be ideal. So that's one type. That's far less lucrative for those business owners because you don't really have optionality. You don't really have a lot of leverage. So structures are different, payouts are different, multiples are different, not in their favor. And then you've got kind of strategic sellers, which is the vast majority. You know, when you read any of the publications, RA Wire, and they talk about these high multiples, these are strategic sales. It's business owners that are looking, you know, for something to add to their business to take them over a hump. Could be human capital, could be help with technology, it could be a better investment platform, you know, it could be a growth engine, right? A lot of the national firms have access to custodial referral programs, and they're growing organically through those, which are, you know, at a very large clip. That's not something that the average RIA owner has access to. So, you know, so that's kind of the second bucket is folks that are looking to use a transaction as a growth lever for their business. And they might just do it with a different business card kind of post.
So Adam, for someone working on a long-term exit strategy, what should the timeline look like for a traditional sale versus a dividend recap? And then what about a shorter-term exit strategy?
Yeah, so long-term exit strategy, I think you have to figure out what does that long-term entail, right? So what am I going to be doing during said term, right? And to Rob's point, if you're going to join a firm that has access to a lot of things, maybe alternative investment strategies, referral programs with large custodians, I think those things, that long-term can really scale up. And you can build a deal around that incentivizes you to do that. Or it can be in that long term, you personally as a seller want to wind down your role and responsibility. So I think there's two types of that deal as well. Okay. It's, hey, I think I'm ready to stop working, but not all the way. And so I'd like to wind down over the course of 5 to 7 years and kind of relinquish, my roles and responsibilities year over year. And then I think there's, hey, I want to exit in 5 to 10 years, but I want to double down here. I want to grow. So I can't just stay here. I need to sell to a strategic that's going to give me more access to that.
Yeah. And my commentary, again, back to something we talked about in the webinar, can obviously expand, is if you're looking to sell, the shortest is going to be just a selling of the business and walking away. You're going to be able to find someone that can take it. Depending on if you want to walk away tomorrow, you find someone to buy the business. Right. You're just going to get a significantly deflated multiple, and it's not going to be as friendly to you. If you want to walk away in 1 year, you'll be able to find someone. If you're looking for more of a strategic, you need 4 years, right? You need 4 years. You need time to do a process, and then you need at least 3 years to get through your earn out. And oftentimes the employment agreements are set for 3 to 5. Internal, 10 years. Takes time.
So what should business owners ask themselves before initiating a sale or recapitalizing process? Rob, I'll start with you on that.
What do you need in your business? Well, you could start, I guess, if we're just addressing the business owner. It would be, what are you looking for? What is the life that you're desiring? That's even bringing up the conversation. And then it goes to the business and the clients, which is like, what do our clients need long term? Additional service, a larger team. And then for the business, what do we need? Like, do we need the ability to finance the next gen? Maybe it's a loan that solves that. If it's a transaction, maybe it's how do we provide a pathway and training and growth opportunities for all of our people in a larger organization than we can provide today. So I think it always starts with that. Like, what do I want as an owner? What does the business need to continue to grow or to grow past that next hurdle? And what do our clients need? Like, what would they value? Yeah. How do I position this to my clients? Whatever decision I make, like, what would get them excited if I put myself in the shoes of a client?
Yeah. And why am I doing this?
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I had there. Everything you said perfect, and just I think a lot of times it's really easy to come up with some of those answers if you just figure out why am I
What's your why? Yeah, that makes total sense.
I like that. Yeah.
Adam, as you see these deals happening, are there any likely factors to be aware of that might inhibit or stall deals that buyers and sellers should be aware of? Is there anything they can do now to get ahead of the potential stallers?
Yeah, so one thing that I always talk about on these deals are, I think folks get really caught up in the numbers, and we could talk about multiples and revenue and growth and percentages and everything else. But the intangibles tend to draw a lot of the emotion out in these deals. And I think that's what stretches things out. Like, what's the operating agreement going to look like? Who's going to be in charge of what? What if there's a disagreement? Who has the winning vote? Those are a lot of things that I think people put as not foundational. Like, everybody thinks about the numbers first. So what multiple am I going to get? How much money up front, right? So if you back away from that and you get out in front of the intangibles of how are we going to work together after this thing closes, right? As Rob mentioned, we got 4 years post-close on a lot of these strategics that we're going to be in a deal with. How are we best going to work together to better serve the clients and make this a really great experience for everybody, including ourselves? So I think when you neglect that side of it and just focus on the numbers, I think timelines stretch out and things get tough. Right?
Yeah, I think that to us, the stallers are trying to position yourself as something you weren't. Like, if you want to make changes and change how your business operates, and like if you've been running a business as a lifestyle practice, there's nothing wrong with that, but you can't all of a sudden say we're a high growth organization. The financials have to back it up, and then the The other staller is the inability to actually pull together the right information in a timely manner. So it's just, again, it's almost like an admin, corporate finance function.
Yep.
It's, if you want to give yourself the best chance of getting through a deal, and I always say time kills all deals. Like, it's not your friend once you get it going. I'm sure it's the same in, when you're going through a lending process, right? Time kills deals. So you don't want to, the only certainty is today. So the further away from today, the more uncertainty. So it's, and financials are a big one. The last one, I just thought of this. It's managing expectations. I know Adam had said valuations before. Misaligned expectations. And there are a lot of folks that sit in chairs like mine, not this particular chair, but the chair of the investment banker, and just kind of throw out large multiples and say, oh man, if you sell tomorrow, like, it's going to be amazing. Your yacht's going to be docked next to Bezos's. It's not really the case. So aligning your expectations as a business owner as to what that looks like in the future for you, if you go through with the sale, internal, external, strategic, whatever it looks like, the misalignment of expectations at the front will blow up your deal once you actually get through LOIs. So just make sure that you are working with someone that you trust and is going to actually be honest with you. And you're honest with yourself so that when you get to that point, you don't sabotage your own deal and say, what the heck, this is.
Have the tough conversations early.
It's better.
They're going to come out, to Rob's point earlier, they're going to come out in this process no matter
The
what.
skeletons will be out of the closet.
I'll be out dancing around.
Good advice. So from the financing perspective, what are the main steps in a dividend recapitalization, and how is that different from a traditional sale? Adam, I'll start with you, and then Rob, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so we talked about this a lot on the webinar too, and went through an example of like a true dividend recap and threw some numbers on it. And I think that we're going to review any type of dividend recap as a loan, right? So think about you're applying for a loan, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, you're taking on senior debt and you are retiring some shares and giving yourself a liquidity event in the form of a dividend recap. So we're going to evaluate it like debt, and you need to prepare your business for that debt, right? Its ability to pay us back. So that's the main thing there, I think, and just understanding that anytime you do something like that, it's going to be lower leverage, as we alluded to on the webinar. It's going to be 2.5 times EBITDA, not 5.
Mm-hmm. And on an external sale, there's not really a lot of financing considerations because it's an asset or a stock purchase, and the buying organization's financing it on their own.
Yeah.
In a strategic, in a peer-to-peer, there might be it might be a seller finance type of deal, but in an external strategic sale, there's not a lot of financing considerations. It's, come as you are and get structured around you.
All right. So thank you both for being here, and all this information is excellent. I do have one last question for you. We tend to like to ask a fun question at the end of these interviews. If you could have dinner with one single living person, who would it be?
Rob.
You stole my answer.
Is that what you were going to say?
I was going to say, well, outside of Adam, but he's very interesting. For me, okay, so there's one guy. I thought about this for a second. There's this one guy, and he's pretty much like the ultimate human. Okay. And it's not Tiger Woods anymore. Tiger Woods may have been there at one point, but it's this guy named Johnny Kim, and Johnny Kim was like he's a son of like Korean immigrants and migrated to the U.S. He became a Navy SEAL, and he was like a Navy SEAL medic, and so he's in the SEALs for a while, and he deployed a bunch of times, and then he went into med school, I believe at Harvard, and so he became an actual doctor, and then that was not enough for him. He went on to be an astronaut.
What? I did. I read
so
this. Yeah.
I think I'd like to meet with this guy, and I'm cool with meeting him anywhere. If he wants to meet up on the ISS space station, I'm cool with that too. But like, that's a pretty. I can't wait to see his next act.
Wow.
Maybe he'll get into the London game.
Yeah. Right. Jeez.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those answers, and thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening to On Point, a podcast by Oak Street Funding, where we bring research and data-backed insights to dig into the minds of industry leaders to learn how to stand out, navigate, and break through this ever-changing industry. I'm Bridget Height, and tune in next time wherever you listen to podcasts as we get on point. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.